In this podcast, is endurance exercise destroying your teeth? Does coffee make you pee your bones out? What is estrogen dominance and why is it important? Are burpees the perfect endurance exercise? And muscle cramping at night, what causes it and how to avoid it? Hey everybody, it's Manny Aragon here with the Structural Performance Podcast, episode number 10. For those of you who don't know me, I am the owner of the Rolf Workshop Center for Structural Performance and the Structural Performance Podcast. So let's see, well, we got some neat topics today, and we're going to start out with, is endurance exercise destroying your teeth? Now, there was a recent article that came out with a study that talked about this, and I found it really interesting because many folks in the endurance community have had this experience where the harder and longer you train, especially in my case, when I was training for an Ironman, I noticed significant tooth decay over that year period. And looking back, there were some possible red flags in terms of the types of exercise, quote-unquote, foods that I was eating at the time. I don't eat those anymore, but at the time, and it's one of the reasons why I stopped eating those, aside from the fact that they made me feel terrible. But this is kind of an interesting thing, because when you see this, now this doesn't happen to everybody, but statistically, this happens more often in endurance athletes than outside of endurance athletes. And this is a recent study that's basically, actually there's a number of studies, but a more recent one that was publicized in the New York Times blog. I got the link down there for you. In terms of specifically trying to find out why that was the case. Now, they've got some interesting findings in that study, and I think preliminarily they're probably valid, but I believe there's probably more to the story that has not been studied yet. And so I've also enclosed, as part of the link down below, a blog that came out a couple of years ago, 2009, in terms which addresses the same topic, decaying teeth of endurance athletes. And in this case, they talk about specifically the types of foods that people eat and the blogger's opinion and supporting data to support his opinion that food plays absolutely no role in tooth decay, which I beg to disagree with, but I believe that there really haven't been enough studies out to show that. And when I find, they will come out eventually. But anyway, so this latest study in New York Times states, I believe it's a Swedish study, and they talk specifically about the causation being dry mouth during exercise, and the reason that the tooth decay happens apparently in this study is because people's mouths dry out, and when they dry out, so does the constituents of the saliva that's been produced. So they had some interesting recommendations, and one of their recommendations was to brush and floss, and perhaps rinse your mouth with a fluoride solution prior to training, and perhaps after training. I think that could work to a certain extent. I don't know that that's really a practical application every time you exercise, because if you're an endurance athlete, that's like several times a day. So you're going to be, this extra bottle of mouthwash and toothbrushes you're going to be carrying around everywhere with you. Some of you may already do that, so great, continue to do that, but others aren't. And I'm not entirely sure that finding part of this puzzle is the whole solution. So So I'm going to say the jury's out on that, but interestingly enough, they did find there's a change in the saliva. What's also interesting to me is in the pre-study blog, this one that came out in 2009, the guy talks a little bit more about the interaction between mineral and pH balance in the blood plasma and in the body, and how the body regulates pH during exercise, which I found to be extremely interesting. And I would encourage you, especially if you're an endurance athlete, to read up on it. Go ahead and click through that link and read it, because he talks about the lungs being the primary buffering system, removing acidic CO2 and then bringing in oxygen. So anyway, very interesting study, and then the science behind it. But again, I would say this is probably not the entire story. So endurance exercise does show a correlation with tooth decay, and the jury's still out in my book as to how to deal with it and how to go about making sure that your teeth don't fall apart. So let's go on to the next topic. Does coffee make you pee your bones out? And I say this because I've heard this numerous times from different professionals that coffee, coffee is acidic. It's about pH 5 or so. So it's a little less, more acidic than the mouth pH, which is somewhere in the range of 6 to 6.5, in the pH of the saliva. And the saliva pH is slightly acidic for a reason. Part of that is because, one, the enzymes that are active in the saliva are going to be active at that pH, most active at that pH. And then two, a slightly acidic environment helps to retard bacterial growth. Now, we all know that there's bacteria in our mouths, and there's a long history and science showing that bacterial imbalance in the mouth and perhaps overgrowth of non-positive bacteria is part of the causation of dental cavities. So, but the implication there is that all acid in the mouth is bad. Now, if you're drinking acidic things that are very acidic, lemon juice, unbuffered vitamin C, those types of things that are at a much lower pH, you're going to take the enamel off of your teeth. So you got to be careful with that stuff. But pH 6 to 6.5 is really, your teeth are designed to operate within that, and the enamel's designed to exist within that. So that itself doesn't. So 5 is a little bit lower. So I suppose if you're, rinsing your mouth out with coffee all day, it could be an issue. Or if you're drinking coffee all day long, it could be an issue. For the kind of actual topical application of the acid to the teeth. But again, there's another role that I believe is not fully understood, and this is where that pre-study blog of the last topic gets into again, which the gentleman states that there is no correlation between food intake and the types of foods that a person eats and long-term mineral loss from the body. Now, I find that very interesting to believe because mineral absorption by the body is absolutely affected by the types of foods that you eat. In fact, there's numerous studies showing that vitamin D, essential fatty acids, and various other things that one should eat to maintain the mineral balance in the body. So how is it that the foods that you eat can add to your mineral balance, but they can't take away from your mineral balance? On the surface, that logic to me doesn't equal up. And my guess is, again, the jury's out on this. The science is really not caught up to that basic incongruency. So again, if you read the pre-study blog, the gentleman vehemently, defends the fact that whatever a person eats has no bearing on their bone density and such. But I say jury's out. We don't actually know everything in the world yet, and there are things that we have yet to discover. So when you see an obvious incongruency like that, it's not clearly explained. It's not easily explained away by the explanations that the man gives. Although there are some very good scientific facts and theories and studies listed in there, so I highly recommend reading the blog, both of them actually, the New York Times blog as well as the trail running blog. But there is an interesting study saying that drinking tea reduces dental cavities more than drinking coffee. So drinking coffee hasn't been shown directly to cause dental cavities, but drinking tea has been shown to reduce dental cavities. So, does that mean that the tea is slightly alkaline? I don't know. That's a great question. And I would, I'm sorry, it's the science-based pharmacy. So the link in this particular section, section 3, is the one that talks more about the pH balancing within the body. It's actually really, really good explanation. So read that. So again, if you're a tea drinker, then, as long as you're drinking black tea and you're not throwing milk and sugar into it, probably it's not an issue because you don't have that contact of the sugar and the acidity that's produced there in the mouth, and perhaps, since I said the jury's out, in the within the physiological system itself. But there is an experimental data set to show that it does reduce cavities. Now, these people have also done mouthwashes with tea, so a person substitute, strong green tea for, a fluoride mouthwash? According to this study, you could. So it might be a kind of natural route to take. But anyway, so a couple things having to do with tooth decay and foods that you eat, endurance exercise. And now let's move on to the next topic. What is estrogen dominance and why is it important? And this is actually kind of a big topic. I'm going to kind of gloss over it. I've alluded to it in my previous podcasts. I'm going to give kind of a quick explanation of it. We're going to talk a little bit about how we measure that, whether a person is estrogen, quote unquote, estrogen dominant or not. And what's important about this is that, often when men will hear the word estrogen, they'll just turn their brain off. But men actually produce estrogen and interact with estrogens within their body. And need estrogen. So it's actually affecting men and women, and its implications are very broad. So this is why I've included it, because especially in modern day society, there is a kind of a lifestyle propensity to be out of balance in terms of the internal estrogens, and then there are definitely health and performance implications that come out of that. So let's start off by kind of explaining first off what are the estrogens that we're primarily talking about. And while there are many estrogens, the three primary estrogens that we're concerned with in this case are estrone, estradiol, and estriol. So in this case, we're going to give them a nickname, E1, E2, and E3. And E1 is estrone, has the word 1 in it at the end. E2 is estradiol, it has the word diol, which means 2, or di. And E3 is estriol, which has the word tri in it. So it's E3, so it links up with 3. So in this case, before we get into the estrogen quotient and what it all means and all that, we're really looking at the fundamental the foundation for this type of thinking and methodology in terms of modification of lifestyle and awareness is that we're really looking at the ratios of E1, E2, and E3 to one another. and then their overall effect within the hormonal system of the body. So in this case, if your estrogen ratio is out of balance in a way that does not serve you, so let's just say in a bad way, if your quote unquote your bad estrogens are high, which really doesn't tell the full story because it's really the ratio that we're looking at. But if your bad estrogens are high, then there are risks associated with that. So the people who are at risk for that high negative estrogens are people who are overweight, people with type 2 diabetes, people with insulin resistance, with metabolic syndrome, hypertension, high cholesterol level, and high triglyceride level. Also a family history of type 2 diabetes. And there's more than that, but that's kind of like, a broad overview. So if you already got one of those conditions or you know somebody who does, the likelihood that they are out of balance with their estrogen, whether they're male or female, is very high. And then some of the things that are associated with estrogens being out of balance, aside from what I've already listed, are any kind of like fibroid type of imbalance in the body, whether it be uterine fibroids, polycystic ovarian syndrome, fibrous breasts, and then there are various cancers that are associated with it. Ovarian cancer is one of them. I think uterine cancer is another one. Breast cancer, obviously. In men, prostate cancer. Another one is colon cancer. So all of these are associated. There's more, but these are some of the basics. And so for men, when the estrogens are out of balance like that, generally your testosterone is also going to be low because of this. So what's happening in men is the testosterone is being actually converted into estrogens. So that's a problem. So the precursor to testosterone as well, androstenedione is also so the precursor to testosterone, also the testosterone itself is being converted, being aromatized into estrone and estradiol, your E1 and E2. Okay? So, and then there is some conversion of estriol as well to an estrone. So, the key here is, and what I've done is I've linked to an article on this, which has a nice little graph, a nice little visual pictorial. So you can look at it and you can see, it's, I think, Figure 1, Biosynthesis of Steroid Hormones. The article is called Achieve a Healthy Estrogen Quotient with Myomin, which is a Chinese herb. But anyway, the point is, and it explains a little more in detail, but the point is, when you look at the graphic, you can clearly see what's going on. And things like, for example, excess stress in your life are going to drive you there. So excess stress will drive cortisol levels higher, which will, indirectly drop your testosterone, right? Whether it's exercise-induced stress, whether it's food sensitivity-induced stress, whether it is emotional stress, whether it is chemical stress from the environment, and for the moment I've forgotten the fifth type of stress, but there are 5 general stressors that we have in life, and those are they all kind of fall into one of those 5 categories. So any of those stressors are going to, if they're excessive and or additively overpowering your body's ability to recover from them, or if you're not recovering enough and the stress is coming again before you fully recover, then you're going to be aromatizing, and in some cases hyper-aromatizing. So this is not a good idea over time because, like I said, it leads to long-term, it leads to issues, long-term stress issues. Also, you know what? If you're an endurance athlete, the last thing you want to do is lose muscle mass unless you're a bodybuilder who's just starting to be an endurance athlete. And that's going to basically, estrogen for men, excess estrogen, is turning you from a man into a woman. So you want to retain your muscle mass, your strength advantage, by keeping your testosterone level high and your estrogen level low, in check. So you don't want to be converting your valuable testosterone into estrogen, all right? And for women, that goes the same for you as well, is that excess body fat and all the other things that we listed for men are also a sign of hyperaromatization. So that would be, that would mean that you're losing muscle mass as well. You don't want to do that, especially if you're an endurance athlete. Actually, anybody doesn't want to lose muscle mass because muscle mass and bone mass are correlated. Greater muscle mass and greater metabolic rate are correlated. Greater muscle mass and health in general are correlated, especially if you're exercising. So you don't want to be, if you're doing excess aerobic training that is non-polarized, in other words, too hard to be easy and too easy to be hard, then, if you're doing all that excess zone 3 training, you're going to be, or eating a bunch of junk, sugar, carbohydrates, those types of things, you're going to be pushing yourself in the estrogenic direction and away from muscle, away from performance, away from good sleep, and away from health in general. So it's something to definitely pay attention to. Now, the estrogen quotient we talked about is the ratio of E3 and it's to E1 plus E2. So it's E3 over E1 plus E2 levels, and that's what you look at, your estrogen quotient. So you want to keep the estrogen quotient low. You want to keep the estrogen quotient, high, because you don't want excessive E1 plus E2. So, all right, the E3 is the one that you want. So you want more of that. All right, so let's move on to the next topic. And obviously, if you have any questions on that, we talked a little bit about in previous podcasts, signs in the body that a person is estrogen dominant, hyperaromatization, at risk for hyperaromatization, how to stop that using the supplement Myomin. There are other supplements that you can buy. There are actually pharmaceutical drugs that you can buy for this. But unfortunately, the drugs don't block both pathways that you'll see in the graphic in the article, Figure 1. They only block one, so you're not getting the whole thing in the pharmaceutical. It actually can be dangerous. Now, something I didn't mention before we go on to the next topic is if you're on any kind of hormone replacement therapy or any kind of sex hormone therapy in general, you absolutely want to be on Myomin to keep this aromatization in check. So if you're a man and you're taking testosterone and you're hyperaromatizing, then you're like throwing away, first of all, you're throwing away money taking this testosterone. Secondarily, you're putting yourself at great risk for getting out of balance with your estrogens, getting estrogens high. And long term, there are plenty of studies to show that there are increased prostate cancer and other types of risks for men who are taking testosterone. So you want to absolutely pay attention to that. So, okay. Now let's move on to the next topic. Are burpees the perfect endurance exercise? And I want to also add postural exercise. And this is actually a good one. There's no one perfect endurance exercise out there. But I would say burpees are a fabulous combination with traditional endurance training because they give you, one, upper body strength training. It's body weight strength training. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the burpee, I've included a couple of links here. One is Joe DeSena, who is the guy who, who's the owner or the guy who started the Spartan racing movement. And he's a huge fan of burpees. And then the other one is a brief history of the burpee, which I found online in a article in Huffington Post. It's actually a really good little history there. So in terms of endurance exercise, and let's also look at structural and postural, because I think there's a big component there. But let's address the endurance exercise. So one of the challenges with endurance training is that if you're not doing strength training as well, specifically resistance training, whether it be body weight or in the gym with weights or using various training tools, in your run, swim, and bike or whatever, then you're really probably falling into that category again of too much zone 3 training, not enough zone 1, or not enough, easy zone 1, 2, and zone 4, 5, 6 training. So you're not going to be producing the kind of hormonal effects that are going to give you the biggest bang for your buck. In other words, response for your time spent. And you're going to be tiring yourself out, reducing your, overly stressing your body, increasing your, estrogen quotient in a bad way, and causing a lot of other problems, destroying your teeth, so on and so forth. So adding burpees into your exercise regimen, if you're not already doing them, or if you don't already have a very dedicated and focused strength training regimen, which again, you don't need a lot. Yesterday, I did one of my runs. I did a short run. It was a 3-miler, and I did every half mile. I stopped and did a set of 10 to 15 burpees. So by the end, I'd done 110. And if I had just run that 3-miler as fast as I could, then what I would have felt for the rest of the day is I would have felt slightly, probably energized a little bit, but also a little bit tired. I might not have slept very well because I'd be a little bit wired still. But because I threw in the resistance exercise during that, there was an energetic effect. So that's actually a calming effect. So I felt very calm during the day. I felt centered. I slept very well last night. So in terms of practical applications, another one of the issues endurance athletes suffer from is sleep deprivation and stress under recovery, because they're wired and they're able to sleep. They're able to calm down at night. But burpees are great because they get both your lower and your upper body. So and they train functional strength into your core. So let me dissect that a little bit. They get your legs. They integrate the functionality of the legs with the pelvis and the trunk. In other words, when you're running, biking, or swimming, the legs play a huge role in moving the body forward in whatever plane, to the extent that their functionality is integrated with the rest of the body. So to the extent that they are working together functionally with the rest of the body. Now, what does that mean? What does that mean? If you have, let's just say very simply, weak hip muscles or whatever, or maybe you have real tight hips. The challenge that you're going to be having is the power, say you're running, the power that you're pushing through your feet and your legs when you're running is shearing off outside of the body in your pelvis and not fully getting to your trunk. So your trunk has to use additional musculature to stabilize itself, thereby wasting energy and not propelling you forward as efficiently. So what does that mean? It's slowing you down, and because your body is not working together as a team as efficiently as it could. So I challenge you to go on your regular run and add in several sets of, say, if you're not doing burpees right now, several sets of 10 burpees. Because anybody can do 10. If you can't do 10, do 5, but do several sets of them. Not one after the other. Do some run, do some run, do some run. So you get that cumulative effect of doing a bunch of them without totally wasting yourself doing them all at once. And you can work your way up to that over time, your endurance, right? But at first, you're really working on strength. So can you even do a push-up? That's where you'd start. If you can't, maybe do a knee push-up. If you can, great, do a push-up. What also helps with this is pull-ups. So pull-ups can help you do a better burpee. Regular push-ups can help you do a better burpee. But what you'll find is over time is that your running will become much stronger. You'll feel that your body is working together more easily. So go and try it. I'd say integrate it in. Burpees are a great addition. I have a goal right now of 100 a day. And I space them out. I do 10 or 15 or 20 at a time, several times a day. Eventually, I'll probably do them all in, several sets, but, one after another. But for now, I'm doing them spaced out through the day so I can get the number in without overtaxing my adrenals and the rest of my system. Now, what about posture? And this is a great question. So, for those of you who aren't doing them but are willing to take the challenge, so I think Joe DeSena has a burpee challenge. It's just like 30 burpees a day for 30 days. I think that's actually a fair challenge. 30 is not a huge number. You could do that in 3 sets of 10 or 6 sets of 5 throughout the day. And anybody could do that. And I want you to take stock of how your body feels now, and then how your body feels after, say, 5 days of doing 30 burpees a day in terms of what does your posture feel like? Do you feel more upright? Do you feel more core support in your body? Do you feel more powerful in your run? Do you feel more powerful in general in your movements? In your swimming even? So this is something I noticed. Recently I went ocean swimming again, and I haven't been ocean swimming in a while, and it was a huge difference, because my core musculature was working more effectively with my arms, so I wasn't over-relying on my arms, but my whole body was moving together more efficiently. Now, in terms of posture, what really and what I get to the core of this when I take people through the 10-session series of structural integration is to get the functionality of the legs integrated with that of the pelvis with that of the trunk. And the burpee is a great go along with that because it reinforces that from the strength side. The structural work doesn't strengthen the body; it helps to balance the body and get the forces traveling more in a more balanced way through the structures themselves without shearing off as much, so more efficiently. But it doesn't strengthen. So that, this paired with that is a really, really good pair. What I have noticed that I feel much more core support. So I just feel, in general, like my trunk is lifting. It's lifted as opposed to being dragged down. I don't feel heavy. I feel lighter. And I can feel that on a daily basis, that connection with the earth through my feet all the way into my mid and upper back. And that's a very powerful feeling because when you feel that, it's just, you are in fact more connected to the earth kinesthetically, and therefore you're able to use there's a improved proprioceptive sense and also kinesiological improvement there. The kinetic chain of the back of the body has been engaged, in other words, and helps to balance out the strain from the front of the body, which tends to dominate in the trunk. So highly recommended. Take the burpee challenge, 30 burpees for 30 days, and then I want to hear back from you guys. And, if you're curious about what a burpee is that I'm talking about a 6-count burpee. So you would start by raising your hands, going, jumping down into a push-up position and doing a push-up, jumping back into the forward bending position, and then lifting your trunk, jumping up into the air with your hands raised, and then starting again. That's one round. So 30 of those a day for 30 days. I'm on the 100-a-day plan right now. I'd like to get up to 400 because Joe DeSantis speaks about doing 400 a day and the improvement in the upper hand. So I'm doing kind of a personal experiment to see what does 400 burpees a day do to my body. Does it make me feel too heavy? Does it make me feel stronger? I bet that there's going to be some interesting improvements. That said, I wouldn't make this your only exercise. I would also do some lateral movements. And hopefully next week or the week after, we're going to have a segment with a good friend of mine who's a strength and conditioning coach on integrating lateral movements into your endurance training regimen to minimize injury, improve performance, and also shorten recovery time. Okay? Now, the last topic, muscle cramping at night. If you're an endurance athlete, you know about muscle cramping. If you're doing half Ironmans, full Ironmans, and you get on the course, it's hot, and you're in the bike, and then when you start running, your quads cramp up, or your calves cramp up, or you get a stitch in your side, and so you've got your salt tablets there. For some of you that works, and for others it doesn't. The jury's really out on salt and whether or not it really helps cramping. So it's funny because, the scientists say, makes no difference. But people who are endurance athletes will tell you whether it works for them or not. So they'll say, I don't care what the science says. I take salt and the cramps go away quickly. Some people are out there drinking pickle juice. That might work. I think it'd be kind of gross if you're on a run and a triathlon. I might throw up the pickle juice. I don't know if I can keep it down, but chicken broth, serves that purpose. There are various things that you'll find in an Ironman run course. Coca-Cola or cola in general. Sports drinks, obviously. I don't use them at all, but so that's a general experience endurance athletes have with cramping. But cramping at night is actually something kind of similar. So if you think about it, muscles require magnesium to contract, and they require calcium to relax. Now, there's more to it than that, but those are, that's the basis of your mineral balance is calcium and magnesium for both bones, for muscular contraction, for nerve conduction. There's so many different things that our body relies on. And to be clear, the stores of calcium in the body are primarily in the bones. There is some in the plasma, blood plasma. For example, I had a client recently who's cramping, and I suggested this, and they said, well, my serum levels are testing normal. So what gives? And what gives is that your serum contains only 1% of your calcium levels. So calcium and magnesium levels are in the bones, they're in the serum, but guess what? They're also in the muscles. So, and it doesn't just go easily from your stomach. First of all, your stomach needs a highly acidic environment to absorb and activate the minerals. So if you are on, say, a protein pump inhibitor or some kind of low acidic diet, or you're taking a lot of antacids, you're going to be mineral deficient to begin with. So I would look there first. And then after that, if you're actually, you don't have those challenges, then muscle cramping at night or in general is usually a function of muscular calcium imbalance. So one of the best ways and fastest ways to get calcium into your muscles is to take calcium. But you got to take the right kinds. And there are various different kinds. You can take bone calcium. You can take calcium lactate, which actually is very quickly absorbable. The calcium pills that you would normally buy in the store are basically limestone. Those are rock, and your body doesn't really absorb them that well. Food-based calcium sources, green vegetables. I don't eat dairy, but some eat dairy. Those can be good sources of calcium. There are others that I'm probably not mentioning right now, but so those things right there are some things to look at right off the bat. So if you're racing, I would suggest keeping some calcium lactate and some magnesium on hand so that you can take them, say you're a triathlete or whatever, during the bike, maybe right when you get on the bike. If you're starting a race like Wildflower or Vegas where it's real hot and you may be starting the race slightly dehydrated, get those minerals in, the day before. Get them in the morning of. Get them in after the swim. Get them in, on the run. But keep them handy. If the salt works for you, take the salt. But I would say post-exercise, post-race, if you're taking salt on the course, drink your electrolytes in a non-sugar-based solution, and use plenty of. Another great way to get your salt is ahead of time, so you don't have to salt on the course, is to eat not sodium chloride, or table salt, but to eat the pink salt, the Himalayan sea salt, the gray, the pink, the various different colors of salt that have a wide complement of minerals in there. So they come in with a balanced set of minerals that your body can use them all, and because your body doesn't just need salt, it needs a whole bunch of different stuff in micro quantities. So start there, and then let me know how it's working for you. That is one of the primary things that I assess when I do a body scan and a nutritional exam with people in my office. So, and it's consistent that probably 80% of people come in and they have low tissue calcium, and they're cramping. There's a tendency to cramp, or it's there but not yet bad enough for them to actually be cramping. So if they are cramping, it's bad enough, and the calcium will really help quickly. If you're not, so whether it's nighttime cramps, or whether it's cramping during racing or training or whatever you're doing, especially for the longer events, say you're an ultra runner or a 508 cyclist or whatever, or a RAM cyclist, you're really going to be relying hard on your minerals. So anyhow, that's it for this week. Thanks so much for listening. Hope you got lots of value out of it, and be sure to consult the show notes. I apologize. Last week I did not get the links up as quickly as I would have liked, but this week they are up with the notes as they go up at the time of recording. So otherwise, this is Manny Aragon of the Rolf Workshop Center for Structural Performance, signing out for episode 10 of the Structural Performance Podcast. We'll look forward to seeing you next week. All the best.